Hey, Rifters, welcome to the show. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. We got a great show today. The great Penghlis is going to be here over the Zoom. Teo from Mission Impossible, the original remake, the TV show. It was in the 80s. That was cool. He played Nick Black. You've also known him mostly for the soaps, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives. So it's going to be fun. He wrote a new book called Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time. And he'll be signing books and stuff at the Grove in Los Angeles at Barnes and Nobles on May 22nd, 7 p.m. Again, Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. Thaao Penghlis will be at the Grove in Los Angeles signing books and doing Q&As for his new book, Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time. All right, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and it's going to be awesome. Enjoy Reza with Thaao Penghlis.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hello.
Hey, Thaao, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I
This
would
is
think a miracle when these things work because over the weeks that I've been doing this on the book and the podcast from the months before, there've been some people don't know how to get on and it all gets
it.
confusing. Anyway, how are you?
I'm doing great. Before we talk about the book, I just gotta say I love the painting behind you.
Oh, yes. That was painted in the late 80s. I went to there was a Spanish artist I had friended. I've had five paintings of his, and he lives in Valencia in Spain. And I saw a National Geographic magazine that talked about the desecration of Tibet.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, I'd like a triptych with Tibetan monks and this is being how it affects them. And so that's why you see so many different faces, basically sad faces, and some women weeping because of the loss that was created by the Chinese invasion.
Yeah. Do you collect a lot of paints? Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
You know,
that's awesome.
I started from when I was very young because I had a boss who was an art collector. So it kind of influenced me. So at 2021, I was studying Chinese art and English 18th century art. And from then, I found my own tastes. And so my house is kind of full of different arts. I mean, every piece has a story.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So I have some wonderful Egyptian pieces and some Chinese vases from 2340 BC that were part of the burial
Yeah. I
ritual.
I find painting because like when I was a young kid, like I enjoyed it, but the older I get, the more I appreciate it. You know what I mean?
It's like classical music. You know, when you're young, you're going, "What's this?" And
Yeah.
then as you get older and you want to get quieter, it helps with the cooking. It helps with the company. You can't have, loud music while you're trying to have a conversation.
No, definitely. But speaking of cooking, you just wrote a new book called about cooking called Seducing Celebrities one cook
Meal
at a
at a
time,
time.
right?
Yeah, one meal at a time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It was an interesting title because my manager, when he called me, he said, "Oh, listen, they want you to write a cookbook," and they got an advance. And I said, "Oh, well, what would we call it?" And so we went backwards and forwards. I said, well, what is food really? Food is seducing people,
Right. Yeah.
having a lovely evening. Not, and I'm not talking about the sexual part. I mean, you
No,
can do
no.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
as another, but it's seducing people because once people get around a table and the way it's been set and the aroma that comes from the kitchen, it does it feeds on those senses. That when people come in the door, sometimes you'll go to people's places for dinner, and there's no smell, you can't smell the cooking, and you're thinking, oh. And I found out years later where I had a friend, she would always have these wonderful meals, but it didn't smell in the kitchen. And then I found out that it was her mother who was doing all the cooking and then delivering it in the afternoon. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
why there was no smell. So when you do it yourself, it's all part of, if we talked about painting, it's all part of a composition, isn't it? It's coming in, it's the atmosphere that's created, it is the smell from the kitchen, it is the way people attitude change. If somebody's in a bad mood, it's interesting how once they come into a place because my house is full of artistic works of others, it makes people sit like they're in a special place.
Oh, yeah. And cooking is also one of those things like painting where you don't appreciate when you're younger, but the older you get, you appreciate it.
Yes, because when you're younger, you're just hungry and you want to eat.
Yeah.
But, I remember I did a soup one time in Australia, and my nephew, and there was small pieces of tofu in it, and it was sweet and sour soup. And he said to me, "Oh my God, what's that?" Little pieces. He'd never seen tofu before. He says, "Oh, that's disgusting." So, I mean, how do
Was I your nephew?
you? He's grown since then, but yes, it was kind of shocking that someone would say to you, "Oh, this is disgusting." What does that do to you? I've never had grown-ups say that to me, except sometimes if you did a whole fish and the head's there, someone will say, "Oh my God, I can't eat this. The fish is looking at me."
Yeah.
It's funny how people respond to things that they don't quite understand.
No, definitely. So I wanted to ask you because this is your first cookbook, but you've written other books before, so you kind of like know how to write. But when you're writing a cookbook, like how did you do that? Like did you cook it first and then write it, or like how was your
Oh,
mindset?
cooking came first.
Okay.
Stories then became part of it because when you're looking at other cookbooks, they're just basically about the cuisine,
Right.
and I wanted something more. And then I thought, well, I've had some great experiences with some of these artists through the years, so why don't I attach the story? And if I hadn't cooked for them, what would I had presented to them at the table? And those who I did, like Omar Sharif, um, so many, what would the cuisine be? And so even when I met Jacqueline Kennedy, all I had to offer her was a cup of tea and these Greek shortbread cookies called kourambiedes in Greek. And so she sat with me for over an hour and we talked about things Greek. And then, of course, 3 months later, she married Onassis. So I'm thinking, oh, well, I influenced her, I think, in that little space. But it's interesting how people, even Doris Roberts, who was a friend of mine from class, she would come every week for dinner,
Oh,
and she would bring a bottle of champagne, and she would sit on in my chair at the head of the table because she was the great dowager herself, right? And
exactly. Yeah.
so she loved
She
to sit
overthrew
like
you.
she was queen. So you have to let people be who they need to be. It's different when I go home to Australia and I stay with my brother and his wife. My brother always looks at me when I sit in his chair. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how the male ego will respond when you look like you're taking control of something they're usually in control of. And so I always laugh. I always do it as a joke, and then I move after because sometimes he gets used to it now. But before, he'd stop at the entrance of the dining room and just look at me like, "What are you doing? This is my place. This is my spot." So that's what daddies do. Sit at the head of the table, and mummy, I suppose, on the other side, and the children in between.
Like old school
Yes, in
style.
between,
Yeah.
you know. there is a ritual, social standing when it comes to how you present and where people sit. And people always said, "Well, where are you going to sit?" And I said, "I'll just sit with the guests. I don't have that place. I'd rather give it to somebody else who needs it."
Right. Yeah.
Feel, like Doris, they feel more important that way and the star of the evening. So, but what I love is when the food is being served, the conversations we've had
Yeah.
over food. Food does a wonderful thing. That's why I called it seductive, seducing celebrities, because it does seduce. And in my early years, I had worked at the UN and I didn't have much money. And I remember I used to have a can of ravioli.
Yeah.
I talk about in my book. Uh, I have never been able to have ravioli again
Oh, really?
because it always reminded me of those early years that were not particularly memorable,
Yeah.
except for that I couldn't afford to have a proper cuisine. So I always swore that once I made it in life, I was going to always make sure the refrigerator was full of wonderful things.
I kind of get that because I used to, I do stand-up comedy now. So like when I was like a open micer, I used to work at a grocery store in the service deli, and I could never, for the light of day, eat the roastery chickens again because I just can't because I know, you know what I mean? And it's like,
So do,
but I love chicken, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I
so
just,
do I.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just can't eat it from a grocery store.
Well, when you see how people handle chickens and if they're not farm raised, and there's so many things, the same with eggs and everything. You get to understand. That's why I always listen to people who will give you advice on what certain foods do. It's very important to understand what we're eating and what it does for our body. Not everything agrees with us,
That's
but
true.
when you find out that Costco's chicken is not something one should eat because it has problems.
Yeah,
Okay, when they exposed it. But people, I notice when I go to Costco's how much they get that chicken because it's not expensive, but they don't understand because it's Costco's, it must be healthy,
right.
and they don't know what it took to get to it.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like seafood from the sea. Did it come farm raised? There's a big difference in buying salmon that was farm raised as opposed to wild salmon. I mean,
exactly.
don't eat farm raised. I mean, that's a lot of chemicals and
Yeah.
dyes in that fish to make it look attractive. And people, and I've said to people in the store, I said, it's better if you bought the wild. They said, oh, I don't like the wild. It's too gamey. I prefer this. And I said, yeah, but it's not good for you. So I don't care.
Yeah, but no, you're absolutely right because like what if they fish like in a pond, a dirty pond, and they just take the dirty dead fish and they're like, "Ah, we made our product." You know what I mean? Like you don't know
Yeah.
100 questions. So I wanted to ask you too, like what's your favorite dish from this book that you like you cook a lot? Like you're like, "Ah,
Mm.
Tuesday."
I love moussaka.
Uh-huh.
Um, Someone gifted me a book on the recipes from the royal households of Europe. And in it, in Greece, there was the dish moussaka, which is basically eggplant and mincemeat and layers of 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 the eggplant and the mincemeat, and then I thought, and then bechamel sauce on top with a lot of Parmesan cheese. So over the years, I've perfected it as far as I was concerned because I remember my teacher, Milton Katselis, had said, I just want to tell you, this is the best moussaka I've ever had. And the reason why is because I thought my mother made the best moussaka. So when I
Yeah.
called her and told her, and what is the trick? I use cinnamon sticks that
Oh,
give it a spicy aroma, and I cook it with the meat with shiitake mushrooms.
nice.
And then I put a lot of Parmesan cheese in between the layers. And the bechamel sauce, I don't like thick bechamel sauce because it's more custardy. I
Right.
like it when it's thinner and it has a crispness to it and the flavor of a Parmesan cheese. And so then when you take it out, a lot of people just cut into it and it's wrong because it'll collapse. So you wait for 20 minutes like turkey.
Right.
You don't take a turkey out and start cutting it because it'll fall apart. So what you do is with moussaka, you wait for at least 20, 30 minutes so it can cool down and settle, and then you cut into it. and then
Oh,
you've got perfect slices, you know. But it is a good, and it's a great meal to, if you've got a lot of people at the table and serving it with a salad. But it's the hors d'oeuvres that I set up at first. I
yeah.
don't want them. You know, you can always tell the actor he's always the first one at the hors d'oeuvre table and the last one to leave because they always think it's their last meal.
Well,
Gregory
yeah,
Peck
because
said
they
that.
never know if it's their last job, right?
Gregory Peck said that time, and I went, "That's funny." And then I noticed that some of my actor friends they just eat and eat and eat, and then I said, "Hey, hey, there are other people coming," you know.
We got everyone else coming.
Yes, you try to even it out, and you think it'd be enough. But some people take the hors d'oeuvre and make it their dinner, and then they're full by the time you serve the main course.
Yeah, and that kind of spoils the main course in a way, right? Because they're
Yeah,
so full from the appetizers and stuff. You're like, hey,
yeah, and I when you ask what do I like in the book, I like my linguine clams. It's a recipe that I discovered um, in my youth. It is a wonderful sauce. You can also do with baked clams, or you can use it as a pasta sauce, and it's really wonderful. That's another that I love, and also the rack of lamb.
oh, that
Uh,
sounds good.
yeah, the rack of lamb I love doing. I serve that with shiitake. I
Yeah,
love cooking with mushrooms because
mushrooms your thing, huh?
I love mushrooms, and also you know when I found out how good they are for you, uh,
Yeah.
that's why the Japanese, you know, eat so many different types of mushrooms, and they've made you know different broths and everything from mushrooms. Um, and I like to do a beef broth over the. But the trick to having cook a fish or cook meat in the oven is that you must have water at the
Yeah.
base because while it's under the broiler, the steam that comes from the water keeps the fish or the meat moist, while the broiler creates this crispness on top.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's like one of those cooking secrets where they say like water and olive oil, they're like the best friends for a cook, you know what I mean?
yeah. Except olive oil, you have to watch. I don't like to fry with olive oil because of the carcinogenic that it becomes after
Yeah, yeah.
the temperature it reaches. Better to use avocado oil.
Avocado, yeah.
And then you've got to understand which are real oils and which are fake oils.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that in stores that the health department doesn't have signs that says these are not real. Or the same thing with the salmon. The wild salmon is really not good for you, but then nobody would buy them. But people don't educate themselves.
No,
So
definitely, yeah.
you know what I mean? So avocado oil, and especially when you've got children and you want them to grow up healthy, um, my favorite is the one that has an avocado on it. That's a pure avocado oil. And
Yeah,
that I like to cook with, you know, if I'm going to fry something, because it doesn't get as hot as olive oil. So I use
definitely.
olive oil for dressings, salads, or things that doesn't have to, you don't cook it. You just use it like when you put it on top of pasta.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This might be a weird question, but would you say cooking in a weird way is a lot like acting? Because like, for example, you have to memorize your lines and do it until you get it right. That's it's like the same thing with cooking, right? Like how many times have you messed up on a dish until you got it perfect?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you use that analogy because I've always compared my cooking to my acting.
Oh my God, we're soul brothers.
And so you bring that up. And the reason why is because if you know how to perfect one thing, you should be able to do another.
Yeah.
Understanding what the base is of cooking. What is the basis of what kind of are you using chicken broth or beef broth? What is your basics and what do you add? It's like making soup. When you have soup, I'll take a whole chicken that's organic and I will boil that for 2 hours
Yeah.
and simmer it, of course, and and then I take the chicken out. I can make a chicken salad out of that because I think there are extensions to foods that you don't just discard it. And then I add, you know, so what do I add to that? So I'll add some curry. I'll add some cumin. I'll add some shiitake mushrooms when I'm doing it with a white bean,
Oh yeah.
and and so I'll add a little olive oil, and I'll also my pepper and the salt, and if you want to add chopped chard, because I like a green in the soup, so it
Yeah.
doesn't all become just white. And it's much more attractive. But it's the same way I do with the acting. How do I start it? What's the basic? Where am I in this particular scene? What is my intention in this scene? So I do an arc, just like I would do a recipe.
Yeah.
So that's why I can parallel the acting to that. And so it's like even writing. How do you become a better writer? Well, when you write, and you write, say, a phrase or a paragraph, um, you have to understand that the language you're using is like taking a weight and building up a muscle.
Right.
So when you write and you keep writing, something about the mind takes a line, and the next time you do it and say you act it out, because of your training in the and putting muscle to the language, it has that much gravitas. And if you look at the way Obama speaks, he says a line and he allows it to land.
Right. Yeah.
So the good orators understand language and know how to express it. There are certain politicians that don't know. They
Yeah.
will talk, but they lose you because they don't know how to speak to you. They don't know how to make the phrase land and wait, have a pause so that the audience grasps it. Like I'm
No.
going to do a book signing next
On
week,
May
22nd.
22nd of
Yeah,
Wednesday at the
yeah,
Grove.
at the Grove. Now I have to say something up front. I don't know what I'm going to say, but because of the language, I have to make sure it lands. I can't just
Right.
tell a story. How do you become a storyteller? Well, you cut the bridges out.
Yeah.
You don't have too many pauses, because your audiences get bored quickly. They're used to being able to change stations or jump into a conversation if you are having too many pauses.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I could help you write a speech because, like I said, I do stand up, so I could like get them there. You know what I mean? I would
What do you
say,
recommend? What do you recommend? You're talking to an audience about about a cookbook, about ingredients, about things that nourish us. I,
yeah,
I call it the magic of the universe. It's about celebration food. It's about allowing people to reward them for being at your home. So it becomes a space in where they feel safe, they trust the food, and then the conversation appears. And so people like to sit around a watering hole.
yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? So it used to be nobody cooks much anymore. I mean, I don't know how many. When was the last time someone invited you for dinner?
It's been a long time. I think also the pandemic kind of ruined that though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right. It has been a long time. Like usually I just do the quick, go to the grocery store and make my own grilled cheese sandwiches.
Mm.
That's the only thing I know how to cook. I'm sorry.
And that's not good for you.
It's probably not.
It's not. I mean, melted cheese is not good for you.
Yeah. Well, I want to come over to your house one day so you could seduce me. I could be one of these celebrities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what would you like? What do you like to eat? What's your preference as far as cuisine?
The lamb sounded really good. I want to try that lamb. I
The
like
rack of
lamb.
lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, because it's crisp on the outside and moist in the inside, and you stuff it with some garlic and rosemary, and you also squeeze lemon on it, and it just is
Yeah. S-
wonderful.
So overall, how long would you say it took you to actually write this book? Because
Six
writing
months.
book 6 months. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was given that space of time. Well, we wanted in about 6 months. Can you do it? And then I sat down and I went, because I cook out of my head, I don't cook from books.
Right.
I just had to so I had to go into my head and think of some of the recipes. But you're talking about 75. That's a lot of recipes.
75 recipes in this book?
Yes.
Oh my, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a lot to think about. But I remember a friend of mine who I used to entertain every week on a Saturday evening. And she used to follow me around in the kitchen, writing down what I was cooking.
Yeah.
Some of those recipes I would never have remembered again because they were spontaneous. I
Yeah.
mean, I would have bought fish, say, for instance, or I would have bought, some steaks or and then I think, well, what will I do? So I open the fridge and I see what's in there. And out of those ingredients, I mix up and create a new recipe, a new sauce for it. So I could never remember what it was, but she had copied down 19 recipes. And then
Wow.
when it came to the Greek desserts, I remember my sisters did those well. So I called them in Australia and I said, give me some specific recipes for your cooking, because my one sister really does wonderful desserts, and all from the island that my parents came from was called Castellorizo in the Dodecanese in Greece, and so that island had its own different recipes, and so they're included in there.
Oh, that's awesome. Have you ever thought about like maybe doing like a cooking TV show for you? You know, like you put it on YouTube and stuff?
Yeah, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah, but you would be great at it. Just be like,
Well, next
yeah.
week, the day after, I'm doing Lifestyles, a television show in which I'm doing 3 segments on that show. And the last segment is going to be a recipe.
Oh no.
You do have guests who come in these days. When you used to be invited over to people's homes during your parents' day, you just ate what they served you.
Right, yeah.
These days, they think they're coming to a restaurant.
Oh
And
yeah,
they say,
they
oh, no, no, I can't eat that. Oh, no, I have allergies with that. Oh, no, I don't like that. Oh, what is that? God forbid you should give them something they've never tasted before. So I get to myself and I'm thinking, okay. So I've had, like, there was a shrimp dish once with a famous actress, which I won't name. And when I went to serve it to her, she said, oh, I can't eat that. It would take me to the hospital. Like, I went to well, could you have told me what that if you've had allergies? I presume that people would say, when
right.
I like them for dinner, this is so I have to ask them. And then I went and I thought, well, I've got to create a vegetarian dish. And that's what I'm doing next week. It's easy. It's really a wonderful pasta.
Oh nice.
And I do it with shiitakes, but I do it with pine nuts and raw peas and truffle oil,
Yeah.
Parmesan cheese, mint and basil and heirloom tomatoes. So that's going to be the recipe that I'm
Oh.
going to do. Um, but being from a Greek household, people always bring you something. Usually you bring a bottle of wine or whatever. But I've got friends who will ask me, "Well, what can I bring?"
Right.
And I go, "I don't know. Be creative." And then they keep asking me. I said, "Oh, why don't you just bring some cash?"
Yeah, that's the yeah. I was actually gonna say that. Like
Yeah, but I say to them, it throws them. I said, bring some cash.
uh well, my last question about cooking, I wanted to ask you is like, so like when you're about to cook, like, because clearly stores don't have every ingredient you need. So do you go like to different
Yeah,
stores? Okay. Like
yeah.
what are your top stores you like to go to?
Whole Foods,
Whole Foods.
expensive.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're so overpriced. But even if you went to Ralph's become expensive now. I mean, they're ludicrous. They don't even have the same quality.
Oh no, definitely.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to Whole Foods. I'll go to Costco, especially if I'm going to get filet mignon.
Yeah.
I'll go there. If I want to do, like in the first course, I'll get fresh lump crab meat and
Yeah.
then make a dip out of that, or I'll do crab cakes. Um, I also get their mincemeat, organic, and I make Greek meatballs,
Oh, nice.
and they're wonderful. I remember there was one guy says, "Oh, I can't eat meatballs. I hate meatballs." And I said, "Well,
Then
what?"
they eat it, they love them.
I said, "Well, why don't you try it?" He didn't stop eating them.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's like they're insatiable. They just keep eating and eating. I say, "Hey, hey, hey! There are other people coming."
It's kind of like Lady and the Tramp, like they when they're eating the thing, like they're scared to eat the meatball, then they eat the meatball, they're fighting it like dogs, and it's funny because they are dogs.
And there is also a dip I like to make, which is uh, some ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and heavy cream, and mix
Oh,
that together. And the Worcestershire gives it a real nice spicy flavor to it, and so it's great for the meatballs. It's also a great dip for shrimp, fresh shrimp.
yeah. How many hours a day would you say that you focus on cooking? Like, does it take a good portion of your day?
No, because I'm pretty fast at it.
Okay.
Like I'm going to cook a chicken. Like last night, I have a chicken that I want to make this soup. And then I thought, well, I can cut a leg from it and I will broil that and have that for dinner tonight. Tomorrow I'll make the soup. So you don't have to make one whole chicken to do what I do. What you do is remove some of it and cook it for another dinner. So how do you
Uh,
economize with things? And I don't like things complicated. Um, I may be more involved when I'm having guests and all that, but for myself, I mean, I have a variety of things. I like fish, so I like to do, and I like scallops, which I like to do with capers. I like to do a branzino fish that I do it like Greeks do, and sometimes I will get olive oil, chopped fine onion, and lemon juice, and herbs de Provence I put in there, and I put that over the fish at the end
oh, nice.
like a dressing, and it's really nice with the lemon. So yeah, olive oil and lemon is wonderful combination, and so with fish it's great, and with the onion it gives it another flavor. And
Yeah.
onions are very good for you.
Oh yeah. Oh man, you're making me hungry.
Oh,
I
okay.
I can't wait
That's
to
the
buy
idea.
I can't wait to buy your book. I did have two or three acting questions if I could just run those by you real
Yeah,
fast.
sure.
I wanted to ask you about Mission Impossible because that's like one of my favorite TV shows, and
Yes.
I wanted to ask you like, did you do your own stunts on that, or how was that like, how was that working?
Yeah, yes. You had two actors who mainly did the big stunts. Um, I had there was a stunt in a circus where I had to jump on a trampoline on two, jump up, and then land up where they do the trapeze.
Right.
And I said to them, "Oh, let me just try it." And I went bang, bang, bang up. And I landed up there because I was an athlete. And the stuntman came to me and says, "Don't do that, you'll take my job away." So you have to think that you have a stuntman too to do
Yeah.
certain things. I did a lot of the masks, so that didn't require any stunt work, just getting up early in the morning and
Or
spending 3 hours
makeup, yeah.
there. That was not always great, but I did that.
How long were you like in a makeup chair on some of them? Like,
Well, I would get there at 3 in the morning
ah,
and then at 6, and then I would come out and I couldn't see over the mask.
yeah,
So I would have to be guided. And so I would sip through a straw my coffee. And then I remember one of the things I learned early on is when you took the mask off and you've been under in the dark for that many hours, when you take it off and you're responding, your eyes become jarred because of the light.
yeah, definitely.
So when I did the mask, I always looked down first to adjust to the bright light and then looked up. So you
Yeah.
learn all the tricks as you go along. But I love that series.
Oh
Uh,
no, it was the best. And I keep hoping like because Tom Cruise makes a new one every, 2 years or whatever. I keep hoping he does like an homage to Nicholas Black and he puts that character in it, because he did it with Jim Phillips in the first one. So like
yeah,
that's
so he took, he became Nicholas Black
yeah,
in
oh yeah,
because
he took but he didn't like the character, like the same character. So that
right, he
yeah,
just did Tom Cruise in a mask. But we were supposed to do some movies in Japan. They wanted us, but Tom Cruise took over and kind of blocked us all out. He wanted the team on, and they would. If you notice the first episode that he did, first movie, you notice that all the team died,
yeah.
and he was the one left.
Yeah.
So that's how he created, the single. But now you're seeing again, he's brought other actors in to play a team with him. It's not just him, it's much more expansive when they use other people.
No, definitely. Yeah. And then I wanted to ask you about Days of Our Lives because you've been on that show forever, and I always feel like you're the best dressed. So I wanted to know, like, do you have something to do with like your wardrobe, or do you say, hey, I want that suit, or like how does that go?
Well, actors didn't know this, but in the late 80s and in the 90s, I would fly to Rome. It was in my contract.
Yeah.
I was given $25,000 to buy my wardrobe in Rome.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I used to love doing it. I'd fly over there and go to all those wonderful stores and get myself all these clothes, and they would send them to Days of Our Lives. So I did that for a few years. But I have a wonderful dresser there, Richard Bluer, and he has wonderful taste, and he understands. Some actors came up to him and they said, "How come he gets all the good clothes?" And he says, "Because he knows how to wear them."
Yeah.
So, that's why you see a lot of guys in t-shirts and all that, more interested in their muscles than they are in their minds. But, he and I always, I would say to him, oh, I would look at the scene. I said, we're going to be in this set. How about if we try this? And he always trusted me, and he was really very open.
Yeah.
Now, because I did fashion in New York in my youth, so I had an understanding about clothing.
Oh, nice. And then my final to last question is, have you ever gone around the world and like been like kind of in a dangerous situation because, like for example, Egypt, there's a lot of wars going on and all that stuff, but they're so beautiful. You know what I mean? Like they have
You
actually,
kidding me?
yeah,
I
like
can I Well, let me put it this way. They tried to kidnap me at 1 o'clock in the morning by the pyramids of Giza, and how I
whoa,
escaped that track. That was me always wanting to see the Great Pyramid of Cheops at my feet, and the other was to see the Acropolis the same way. And I had won some money at the casino, and I got into a cab and I said, "Take me to the pyramids," and because it was a full moon, I
yeah,
thought, I bet that full moon's on top of Cheops, and you couldn't believe it. Looked like something from outer space. It had that wonderful pyramid, that big one, and then on top of it was the full moon, and it created a halo on top of it. So
yeah,
I ran because in those days nothing was blocked off. There was no fence or anything like it is today. And I ran, not wanting to see anything in front of me until I reached it, and I couldn't go any further and look up, and there it was. And I began to sob. And the next thing I know is 5 men with rifles start dragging me into the sands behind the
wow,
pyramid, and I had to create an outlet to escape. And when I did that, I told them that the Greeks built the pyramids. It wasn't the Egyptians.
yeah,
And one translated to the other. They start screaming at me, and they forgot about their purpose. And because I was a fast runner, I just ran. And then the police came, and they told me that people disappeared in the sands. Um, and so that was not particularly intelligent of me at that time. The other was when I went into Hezbollah territory in southern Lebanon, and I was enamored by the amount of bullet holes that were in these wonderful classical buildings. And even though it was dangerous, we were going to a place called Sur. I wanted to see the biggest hippodrome out of, if you ever saw Ben Hur, it's where they used to do the chariot races. And I wanted to
right,
see the hippodrome down there. It was the second largest one. And we had to go through this place just before we came to Sur. And when we paused, I was with a friend from Australia. They opened the door, a military guy grabbed me, threw me against the wall, and accused me of being an Israeli spy.
oh my God,
And I mean, you cannot, that face that I saw in front of me, the hatred of the Israelis.
right,
And the thing that saved my life was that a UN worker across the street witnessed it and recognized me because he was from New Zealand and Days was very popular.
wow,
So he came and saved the day. But yeah, there've been other times where I could have gotten into trouble, even when sometimes I would just stare at somebody because I thought, oh, that's an interesting character. what is he doing? What does he do? And I remember staring at one guy, big guy, and I thought, oh, I wonder if he's secret police. And he turned around and caught my eye, staring at him, and he stared back at me, and I didn't break the stare. I just stared at him, and he turned around and lifted his jacket and showed me his gun.
Whoa. Holy
Yeah,
Lord.
I mean, and there's also entrapment in Egypt. You have to watch out for entrapment. They'll try to
Man,
entrap you for anything to make money off of you. So,
you
uh,
got so many great stories. And then you thought, hey, I'm going to write a cookbook.
right, and invite all those assassins to my
Uh,
house for dinner
well,
and poison a lot of them.
well,
That's right.
Teo, I want to respect your time, but where can the folks at home follow and support you at?
Oh well, you can find me on social media on X or Twitter and social media, Facebook and Instagram.
Oh,
Thaao
nice.
Penghlis.
Yeah. Well, man, it was a real honor talking with you, man. And
Oh,
thanks for being my best friend for 30 minutes. It was cool.
oh, that was good. That
Yeah,
was good. Thank you, and thank you for the good questions.
of course. Well, have a great day, and you could go get your book, "Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time," and go see you and meet you at the Barnes and Nobles at the Grove in Los Angeles on
Yeah.
May 22nd at 7 p.m.
And also my podcast that I did on the Lost Treasures, and that's four uh, pieces, individual pieces on the Lost Treasures of Troy and Mycenae, and Ulysses, and that's on Spotify and Amazon.
Awesome. I'm going to listen to that. That sounds fun.
Yeah. So I thank you.
Oh,
Take
yeah.
care, and make sure you eat well.
Yeah, I can't wait to come over and try that lamb. It's going to be great.
Oh, good.
All
All right.
right. All
Take
right.
care.
Bye,
Bye bye.
Teo. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Bye bye.
All right, guys. That was the episode. Subscribe, rate, review, and we'll see you guys next week on Reza Rips.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.